It's Ice Dragon time, or Ice Demon, maybe, or Ice Demon Dragons. In any case, it's the ESTORIR spawn, so of course I'm gonna do a full breakdown. But first, download Dungeon Hunter 6, a mobile free-to-play action RPG game where you play as a bounty hunter in a stunning dark fantasy open world. Play as a mage, warrior, assassin, monk, or zephyr, customize your own weapons, and summon companions to aid you in battle. Use the link in the description to start playing now on iOS or Android, and see you hopefully soon. Alright, so we're going to start out by taking a look at the trait, and then we're going to examine both the male and the female, their skills, and which one's probably going to be better, or maybe they're both equal. We'll find out. And then I'm going to give an overall assessment of this particular clan at the end. All right, so I have an epic hero up here. So of course, when we look at the trait, the number is going to be higher depending on the rarity. This one's called Icy Thorns, and it says when taking active skill damage or ultimate attack damage, the attacker takes some percent, here it's 4.7%, more damage for 3 seconds, and it stacks up to 2 layers. I feel like that wording's not super clear, but basically what it means is that when he is taking active skill or ultimate damage, whoever's dealing that damage to him is going to take more damage. So this is a pretty good trait to go along with area of effect types of teams that you have. Against other area of effect types of teams, where if you can spread this trait out, you're going to maximize the amount of damage done. So if it's on a few heroes, that kind of thing, then hopefully the whole team on the other side, especially if there's a lot of area of effect damage, is taking a lot more damage from your team, which is also dealing a lot of area of effect damage. So this is better on area of effect damage types of teams. However, interestingly enough, whenever you're in like a boss situation where there is just one opponent on the other side of the battlefield, then you don't have to worry about that area of effect stuff. It's just going to happen, right? So the effect is just always going to apply to your opponent. I think this is actually a pretty good trait, but it's a tricky one to work with, and you have to be very intentional with how you're using it and who you're putting it on. But I do like this as a trait, so if you're interested in this clan at all, it might be worth it just for the trait, even if one day you're not using the hero. So I do like it. I do think that there's some other better clan traits out there, just a heads up. So it's not necessarily one that I'm chasing, but if you're like a newer player or a mid-range player, that's absolutely a great trait to be working on. Let's take a look in the renowned champion section at just maxed out skills and abilities here. All right, so this ESTORIR spawn, they are tanks. I'm going to say up front, we are not in a tank meta. We at least used to have a sort of like balanced meta as far as the different types of clans go, maybe like 6 months ago, where there were several very good tanks in the top tier teams. But we're at a point right now where the meta is made up really of just gigantic damage dealers, as many as you can possibly get on your main comp, at least at the higher tiers of play. It's not that tanks are useless. Some of the best tanks in the game, and there are some really good ones, are really good on like team 2s and team 3s and things like that, if you're talking like Valley of Conquerors and Guild Conquest. So this has to be a very good, very different type of tank to matter, is what I'm saying. Let's take a look at the skills, and I always like to start with the passive because it's usually the first thing that affects the battlefield. For the male, Perma Winter. Enters frozen status for 6 seconds after being killed. When frozen status expires, the caster revives with full health. Each time they're revived, the next frozen status lasts for 2 more seconds. If there are no surviving allies on the battlefield while in the frozen status, the battle is immediately lost. So he is a guy that's obviously going to stick around because he just keeps reviving, and we've seen that be a really powerful effect for timeouts in this game. So what I'm talking about is like the Choir Discordants, for example, or the Galabars, who can just become so impossible to kill that the match keeps going on. However, one thing that does concern me about this passive that could potentially make it look better than it actually is in reality is that the timeouts with the Galabars and the Choir Discordants always happen because they're the last one on the battlefield and they just don't die. Problem is, if he's the last one on the battlefield, it's basically like you just have a 4 champion team anyway, because when they're gone, he's gone. So it's tough. I think this sounds better than it's actually going to be. Let's take a look at the active skill, though. Hyperthermia Ward. And this is like the fewest words I've ever seen on a skill in Bloodline. Grants damage immunity to the caster and an ally, front row first, for 5 seconds. Cooldowns reset each time the caster is revived. So that's interesting, and it is a defensive factor that will help keep the team alive. So, you know, he does need an ally alive in order for that passive to mean anything. And then the ultimate. ESTORIR's Cryo Protection permanently increases the caster's max constitution by 20% while keeping current constitution percentage. Also grants protection to 2 allies with the lowest constitution for 8 seconds. During protection, the 2 allies are immune to control effects, and when they take lethal damage, the caster takes the damage instead. So this is helping out the passive a bit, where again, you need your allies to be alive. So it's just directing a lot of the damage that's happening in the match to him, and he'll keep reviving. So what you're hoping for, if this is going to work, and I think it's kind of risky just with the timing of things, but if this is going to work, it's going to be that all the damage the other team is trying to cause is being funneled into him, and he keeps dying and reviving while the rest of the team is protected. The problem, I think, is going to come in when he's frozen. 6 seconds is like an eternity in this game. Maybe not for like newer or mid-level players where some matches can play out 20 seconds, 30 seconds or longer, but in the higher tiers where everybody has really maximize the damage that their teams are able to do, a lot of matches are over in 10 seconds. Even with the Bulko meta, these matches are extremely fast. So, you know, it's not really to your benefit to have a champion just sitting on the battlefield doing nothing for 6 seconds. And your team can get wiped out in that time. So I'm just saying. I think that his skills look really, really cool. But I think they just look cool. I'm not sure that in practice this is actually going to mean much of anything. What kind of traits would I use here? Well, again, you want him to soak up damage, and some of his skills rely on constitution. So I'm thinking energetic. I guess, I don't know if it's necessary to really have to use the ultimate right away, but if you want to do that, you'd have to use Pure Heart if you're a Bulko meta, and you would have to use something like Focused if you just care about it going off fast, or Agile if you are thinking it's going to be a longer term match that's more sustained and you just want it to keep going off frequently throughout the match. Focused has been nerfed down to just the beginning of the match. And it's very good in metas where the match lasts 10 seconds. But if we're talking any of these like 20 to 30 second matches, which is kind of what you're hoping for with him, then you don't need those like faster mana gain types of stats. But definitely energetic and probably something like honorable. You want him to soak up damage. You want him to be able to protect his allies. You want him to be able to be hard to kill. The problem being is it doesn't matter if nobody else is left on the battlefield and then he's killed. So let's take a look at the female. The female, her passive is Healing Rhyme. When taking lethal damage, the caster enters turnabout status for 7 seconds, granting the caster immunity against execution. So we're talking like Phoenix, and we're talking male Soulkeeper. Converting 100% of the damage taken into Constitution. If the converted Constitution exceeds her max Constitution, it will be converted into a 4-second shield. Turnabout status has a 30-second cooldown. Remaining cooldown is reduced 26.7% each time an ally dies. That's a really interesting type of passive here. And I think it's kind of niche. Like, it'll be fine like once, like when it happens once. But then you're at the mercy of just like a normal match. Polar Storm generates an ice domain around the caster for 5 seconds, reducing 3% of the caster's max constitution per second, which I don't usually love having some kind of like drawback to a skill, but let's see what it does. Dealing an equal amount of damage to nearby enemies in the domain. Actually, if I'm gonna stop right there, I don't really like that text, because you're basically taking down your own constitution and then spreading it out to other champions around you, meaning you're dealing less damage to any individual champion than you're kind of dealing to yourself. However, if you have a lot of constitution and the other champions around her have like a lower constitution and are more of like glass cannons, like they're dealing a lot of damage, but they're not, you know, very sturdy, then perhaps that could be okay. Enemies in the domain have their fortitude reduced by 35%, so that will help. So she's taking down her constitution. Now they have lower fortitude, so it's dealing that in the form of damage. It's actually dealing more damage. Constitution will not be reduced, but the amount of damage inflicted to enemies within the ice domain will remain the same while in turnabout status. So from the passive, like when turnabout status happens, if this active skill goes off, now you're not actually taking down your own constitution, so we don't have the drawback anymore. We just have the damage being dealt. So in that case, it's good, and you're looking to try and maximize the amount of this active skill going off in turnabout status. However, again, these numbers, just kind of in the last time we talked about this, it's just a long time. I mean, once you get the turnabout status, 7 seconds is a long time in this game. But when you're not in turnabout status, it can take forever to get there. So it's a real big drawback if you're not in turnabout status. If you are, it's fantastic. Torir's Frost Breath is the ultimate. Spits Frost Breath back and forth to a fan-shaped area in front of the caster. Each spit reduces the caster's max constitution by 5%, so there's the drawback again, and deals an equal amount of damage to all enemies within the area, reducing their attack speed by 30% and constitution recovery by 80% for 4 seconds. So that's the most exciting thing that I've seen so far. Now we're reducing their attack speed and we're nerfing their healing, which this is an effect that in Bloodline they've been trying to find a way to really kind of nerf what Male Water and Sun is doing, because he's the best healer in the game. And so this is going to help with that, although, again, it's selective, and Male Water and Sun is just dominating, so I don't know how much this is really going to affect that, but this is the most exciting thing I've read on these so far. Enemies that take Frost Breath damage 3 times consecutively will be frozen for 2 seconds, which is basically a stun. The caster is immune to control effects when casting the ultimate. In turnabout status, each spit will not reduce the constitution, but still deals the same amount of damage to enemies. So as you can see, how good she is really depends on turnabout status. Because if she has the drawback of having to like lower her constitution, to me, that's just a really big drawback. But if she can be in turnabout status, if you can maximize the amount that's happening, then the actives and the ultimates are really good, are really, really good. I have to say, I think the female shows more promise to me than the male does. The male kind of looks like a potato to me that you throw onto the battlefield and hope he's just going to be tough and absorb all the damage while the rest of the team is the one that's going to be dealing the damage. And your match is really going to depend on that. You're going to have to build the team to do that, to funnel damage to him. But yet you're still going to need to keep the rest of the team alive so he can do what he's supposed to do. I just feel like in a lot of ways that's making your team 4 versus 5. I could be wrong. I'm just speculating. There's not been enough testing done yet to know, but I'm just worried about that for him. For her, she's not so much your traditional tank. You can build her in a way as far as traits go to make her really, really tough. Of course, you want the constitution high if she's got that drawback of lowering the constitution. So we're looking at energetic again, and we really don't care about strength here. So you can just max out that ability to do strength constitution through like energetic. But what's really nice about a champion like this, if you're going to try the female in any builds, is there's a lot of space there to put your all team traits on her. So the kind that's like increasing the attack speed of everybody, or how much damage everybody's doing, or those traits where it gives an effect to the entire team fits on her, because there's not a lot of just pure energetic traits you can throw on there. The ultimate is good. The ultimate is very good, but again, it's one that I don't think you necessarily have to like race to do. It's one that you can probably just play around with the traits that you think are valuable. I would just be building her to be tough, probably energetic, honorable, and then a couple of the special clan traits that give an effect to the entire team. That would be what I do. And I think she is more useful. I do think that there's room to find synergies with her skills and other heroes' skills to make a powerful effect. Overall, my assessment of this clan is it's interesting, but they are not as strong of tanks as probably some of the tanks that have come out in the past, like the Tide Razors, like the Galabars. And there's probably a couple others even, but those to me are some of the better tanks in the game, and I don't think that the ESTORIR spawn really matches that level. But that's just me. They are different. They're kind of interesting, and it is going to take playtesting them. Sometimes when you get a different type of hero like this, it just takes experimenting till you find that right mix and it unlocks their true potential, and that could be coming. These have only been out for like a little over a day, so if you enjoy videos like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification, and I will catch you in the next one.